Welcome into part 4, where we're going to look at building on where we've got our ship moving, we've got our random obstacles coming down, and now we're going to do pixel perfect collisions. And I want you to notice, so this hit when the object hit the spaceship. Let me see if I can do this a little better and hit it like, there we go. So if we didn't use that get alpha that we did when we set up our images, it would create a rectangle that we would hit before it got to the actual image. But since we're using transparency, with what we're going to do today, we're going to be able to get pixel perfect collisions where it'll actually have to hit our ship object where it's drawn before it triggers this game over situation. So here's what we're going to do. Taking the code that we've built through the first 3 things, we're going to add 2 definitions. We're going to add a definition that we're calling display message, and that's how we're going to write our end message. And eventually, when we do an opening screen, do you want to play the game, or Ready Player One, whatever we want to do, we're going to use this method. And so this method will take screen. It'll take the text of what we're actually going to write. It'll take the font, which we're going to build a font variable here in just a second. It's going to take color, and then it's going to take the Y offset, and that's basically telling it how far above or below the center of the screen are we going to write it, because we're going to pass that in a minute. And then we're basically going to screen.blit, and before that, we're going to take our message. We're going to do font.render. We're going to pass in our text. We're going to pass in true, and then we're going to pass in our color. And then that's going to put it on the screen. And then we're going to screen blit the message we've created. And then we're going to pass in this variable that we have built. And this is going to be a little convoluted. So make sure you can go out to the Git repository that's in the description if you want to copy this directly. But basically, we're saying screen, get the width, divide it by 2, and then we're going to subtract from that the message width divided by 2. And then the same thing with screen height. We're going to do screen height divided by 2 minus the message height divided by 2. And then both of those give us the center of the text, center of the center of the screen, and then we're going to pass in our Y offset. And then if we're going to end the game because of a collision, we need to be able to reset the game. And this reset game method is going to be built as we add score counters and other things. But basically what we need is we're going to do def reset game, parentheses, colon, and then we're going to have some globals. And right now all we have is game over. We have the obs, which is our collection of obstacles, and the ship, which is our ship object. And so just like when we started the game and we created our ship with ship equals ship, I'm passing screen width and screen height, and our obstacles, we create a collection of obstacles passing in screen width and screen height 4 underscore in range 3. So we're going to create 3 obstacles when we reset the game. And then we're also going to have a var game over, and we're going to set it to false so that our game knows to play. And we'll get to that in a minute. And if you're doing this in this order, font should probably be grayed out, and game over will be grayed out because we haven't created those variables yet. So let's go down to where we're creating our variables. We're going to create 2 more variables. We're going to create font, and font is going to equal PyGame.font lowercase .font capital, and then we're doing parentheses none comma 36. And so the first one is where we would pass in the font we want to use. I'm just going to use the default font, so I'm going to say none. But this font takes a file org for, like, if you want to use Times New Roman or whatever. But just for ease here, I'm going to pass in none, and I'm going to pass in 36 for the size. And then we're going to have a Boolean game over that is set to false when the game starts, because the game is not over. Okay, so we've built our two definitions. We've built this variable. Now we're going to go down to our while loop, and we're going to do a couple things. We're going to add directly under the for event PyGame get where we're looking for quit. Underneath running false, we're going to add an if not game over. That means this code is only going to run if game over is false. So if not game over, and make sure your if lines up with the for, and then you're going to have to take everything down to ship draw, and you're going to need to tab it over to where all that stuff exists under the if not game over. And so all of that is going to be the same code, but after the ship draw, we're going to add, even with the ship draw, we're going to add an if statement, and this is how we're going to do our collision. So pygame dot sprite if pygame dot sprite collide, and then we pass into it our ship as the object that we want to know if it's hit anything. We're going to pass in our collection of obstacles called obs. That says if the ship hits any of those things, then it's going to trigger this collision. And what this does is this creates a list of everything in obs that collided with ship. And so in a later thing, we're going to look at actually finding out which objects collided. But for now, we just want to know if it collided with anything. False, false says basically it's true or false. Do we want to kill the obstacle that touched our ship? At this point, we don't want to. So we're going to put that as false. And then we put in this pygame.sprite.collide mask. This is what makes sure that it collides with what doesn't have transparency. If you remember back when we built our ship and our obstacle, if you'll remember, we made a self.mask and we passed in pygame mask from surface.selfimage. That means everything that doesn't have transparency creates a mask, and that's what it's going to use to do this pixel perfect collision. If this is triggered, we're going to set game over to true, which means when it hits this if, it's not going to run any of this code. And so you need to make sure lined up with the if not game over, we're going to put an else colon, and then we're going to call that display message. And so we're going to do our display message, and in the parentheses, we're going to pass in screen. In my case, I'm going to pass in the text game over. I'm going to pass that variable font. It's very important. This is the color. Red is 25, 0, 0, but you need to pass that in side parentheses. So this passes as a single color. And then I'm saying I want it 100 pixels above the center of the screen. And then I'm going to call display message again, pass screen. I'm going to ask the question, do you want to play again? Yes or no? Comma, I'm passing the font again. This time I'm going to do it in white, which is 25, 25, 25. Be sure that's in a parenthesis so it passes as one color. And then I'm saying I wanted 150 pixels below the center. And then we're going to look for whether they pressed yes or no. So we're going to add keys equals pygame.key.get_pressed method. And lined up with keys, we're going to go if keys. In the bracket or the braces, we're going to do pygame.k_y, which means did they press the key Y? If so, we're going to call that method we wrote reset game. We're going to do an elif right here. And if keys pressed is no or in, we're going to set the game running to false, which will kill our game. And then make sure pygame display flip and pygame.time.clock.tick60 is outside of this if else, because we want it to run regardless of whether the if is called or whether the else is called. And so if we lined everything up right, we should be able to hit play and have our collision that writes our text. Something else that we can do to clean up our code is sometimes we might forget to put these parentheses, or we don't want to have to write this over and over again, so we can go up to our vars right here, and I can do red equals 255 comma 255, comma, 255. And I can do white equals, I'm sorry, red is 255, 0, and 0. And white is 255, comma, 255, comma, 255. I can now go down here, and that way we don't have to do this every time. I can say red here, and I can do white here. And when I hit play, it's going to do my colors that way. That's your pixel perfect collisions. And what we'll do next time is we will look at keeping score and how we reset that score as part of our reset method. Also going to keep levels, and when we get over a certain score or certain level, we're going to tell the game to add more obstacles. So I hope you'll come back and join us for our next discussion on how to make the game more difficult.